I came to the capital to break off my engagement with Jiang Nanting, the heir of the Marquis of Zhennan. I had a childhood sweetheart I loved dearly. While he too had a suitable match from an equally prominent family, we could have parted amicably, free to marry others henceforth without entanglement. Yet by cruel twist of fate, someone drugged us, leaving us lying together at a banquet. We were forced into marriage. Jiang Nanting believed it was my scheme to covet wealth and honor. Hating me for a lifetime, the son and daughter I bore were taught by him to disown me as their birth mother. After a life of misery, I opened my eyes again, reborn on the day I set off for the capital. Su Jingyao, my childhood sweetheart, reluctantly urged me to return soon, saying he would wait for me at home. I threw down my bundle, leaped from the carriage, and rushed straight into his arms. I won't go to the capital. The engagement can be called off with a letter. Let's get married right now. Surprised and overjoyed, he asked, truly? I nodded like pounding garlic. Absolutely true. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. Su Jingyao and I were childhood sweethearts who grew up together. My family ran a fabric shop in the west of the city, while his family operated an embroidery workshop in the south. Not only were our elders business partners, but they were also fellow villagers and neighbors. Their relationship couldn't have been closer. Since I could walk, I've been trailing behind him, wandering from the west to the south of the city every day. In spring, we'd go on outings by the lake. In summer, we'd pick lotus seeds from the river. In autumn, we'd fly kites. And in winter, we'd build snowmen. When my parents were busy with their business, it was mostly Su Jingyao who took care of me, having grown up together since childhood. It was only natural that we fell for each other when our first love blossomed. I had thought that with mutual affection and open-minded elders, our marriage would proceed naturally. Yet who could have imagined father would come to me with a troubled face, saying I had a betrothal agreement with the heir of Zhennan Marquis from the capital. 15 years ago, the old Zhennan Marquis was ordered to suppress bandits in Liangzhu but suffered severe injuries and was saved by my father. Being a man of strong emotions, the old Marquis generously gifted my father an exquisite black jade Kylin pendant inlaid with pearls. It was said that the eldest grandson of their family was close to my age, and when I came of age, they would send for me to enter the capital as the heir's consort. Father was filled with trepidation and dared not refuse. I had thought that with little contact between the two families over the years, and no one coming for me even after I passed the age of marriage, this betrothal would be void. But a letter arrived from the capital a few days ago, intending to discuss the marriage between the two families, and only then did father panic. I took the letter and examined it carefully, breathing a great sigh of relief. It turned out that the old Marquis had already passed away from illness 5 years ago. The letter from the Marquis of Zhennan's residence ostensibly discussed the marriage between our families, but between the lines, it was filled with disdain for my merchant-class background. Upon further inquiry, I learned that my so-called fiancé had already found a well-matched, high-society sweetheart in the capital. One is the heir to a marquisate, the other a princess of a princedom, a perfect match, made for each other. The letter from the marquisate, its true intention, was to have my family be the first to propose breaking off the engagement. After all, my father had saved the old Zhennan Marquis's life. They had received such a great favor. If they were to propose breaking off the engagement due to a difference in social standing, wouldn't that be openly telling outsiders that they were ungrateful and heartless? Such noble families care most about their reputation. How could they ever allow their good name to suffer the slightest damage? After I explained everything in detail to father, he finally let out a sigh of relief, leaving mother to watch over the house. Father and I set off for the capital to annul the engagement. At first, everything went smoothly. Upon learning of our purpose, the Marquis's household, which had previously looked down on us with contempt, suddenly treated us as honored guests. At the farewell banquet hosted by the Marquis's household for us, someone had slipped an aphrodisiac into my tea. When I awoke, I found myself lying beside Jiang Nanting, the heir of the Marquis's household. Under the gazes of the Marquis's household, some filled with disgust and contempt, others with shock and disdain, I dragged my aching body, my heart feeling as if it had been plunged into icy water. The dowager of the Marquis's household looked at me coldly and declared with finality, "Prepare for the wedding. Since Miss Qin thinks so highly of my grandson, even going to such lengths to scheme for this match, and considering the Qin family's life-saving grace towards our old Marquis, naturally I shall grant your wish." Jiang Nanting's eyes burned crimson. "Grandmother, I've already pledged my heart to the princess. How can I marry another? I tried to explain that I knew nothing of this scheme, that I too had been framed, and that I never intended to become the heir's wife. My father hastily added that we were willing to depart immediately that very night, and would never dream of disrupting the heir's marriage to the princess. But then the second young master of Marquis House, Jiang Beiwang, jumped in. Elder brother has already taken Miss Qin's virtue, how can he not take responsibility? Moreover, Uncle Qin saved our grandfather's life. Miss Qin was always meant to be elder brother's betrothed. I wanted to argue further, but the dowager cut me off decisively. Enough, this matter is settled. From that day forward, my life plummeted from the mortal realm into an Azura's hell. First, you feigned breaking off the engagement to win my favor, then you drugged me, sacrificing your own innocence so I would be forced to marry you, and feel guilty about it. I suspect that so-called childhood sweetheart you claimed to have was also a lie, wasn't it, from beginning to end? Your only goal was the position of crown princess, wasn't it, Qin Ruofei? What a brilliant scheme you've devised. On our wedding night, Jiang Nanting tore off my bridal veil and subjected me to a torrent of humiliation. I never intended this. When father and I came to the capital, we genuinely meant to dissolve our engagement. My heart turned to ashes, yet I refused to bear this unjust disgrace in silence. What's so great about being a princess consort? From beginning to end, all I ever wanted was to marry my childhood sweetheart Su Jingyao and be his loving wife. But Jiang Nanting wouldn't believe it. With disgust in his eyes and mockery on his face, he said, enough of this pretense of virtue, you've already secured the position of the heir's consort. No matter what you say now, I won't believe a word, nor would anyone in the Marquis's household. In their eyes, I was a vain and scheming merchant's daughter with despicable morals. Though I married Jiang Nanting and became the nominal heir's consort of Zhennan Marquisate, in reality, my life there was worse than that of a lowly servant. Jiang Nanting's beloved, Princess Jiafu, married his cousin Jiang Beiwang. Thus Jiang Nanting hated me even more. Since our marriage, he never entered my chamber. Yet on the day Princess Jiafu married Jiang Beiwang, he came. He told me that my father, on his way back to Liangzhu, was ambushed by mountain bandits, fell off a cliff, and vanished without a trace. My heart was utterly broken, yet he laughed with joy. This is retribution, Qin Ruofei. This is your punishment for tearing me apart from the princess. I endured 15 long years in the Zhennan Marquis's household. I thought of revenge, and I also thought of ending my own life. Jiang Nanting used my mother to threaten me. If you dare die, I'll send your mother down to accompany you. Qin Ruofei, your father already died because of your vanity. Surely you don't want your mother to be buried with you. Princess Jiafu and Jiang Beiwang were famously the most loving couple in the entire capital. Under such provocation, Jiang Nanting grew increasingly paranoid and perverse. When the dowager was alive, he still showed some restraint. My son and daughter were born during this time. After the dowager passed away, Jiang Nanting completely cast aside all restraint. The two children I risked my life to bring into this world were taught by him to despise me. Their own mother, a lowly merchant's daughter, fit to be my mother. I wish you would die soon, so father could marry a noblewoman and register my sister and me under our new mother's name. 15 whole years, a past life so despairing it was suffocating just to think about. Having finally been given a second chance, I wished to be as far from the capital as possible. How could I be so foolish as to repeat my mistakes? In front of the house, beneath the apricot tree, I held Su Jingyao tightly, as if embracing a priceless treasure lost and found again. Counting carefully, it had been 15 years since we last saw each other. In my past life, I was trapped in the Marquis's residence, while he stayed in Liangzhu caring for my mother, waiting for me his entire life, never marrying. I was the one who failed him. Father hurriedly got off the carriage. What's going on here? The betrothal hasn't been cancelled yet. Let go. What kind of behavior is this? I didn't let go. I held Su Jingyao's hand tightly and reached out to pull father. Father, we're not going to the capital. The Marquis's family never thought highly of us anyway. Why should we rush to the capital like eager fools? They write letters, and so shall we, since neither side wishes to honor this betrothal anyway. Why bother with formalities? Would they really hold a grudge against us over this? Father was none other than the old Marquis of Zhennan's life-saving benefactor, Xiao Fei. Why are you crying? The moment father said those words, I realized I had been crying without even noticing when the tears started. Father, mother, even Uncle Su and Auntie Su who were standing nearby all gathered around me. Su Jingyao wiped my tears with a pained expression, while father hesitated several times, holding back his words for my sake. Surrounded by my dearest family, My tears fell like broken strings of pearls, and I cried until I could barely breathe. Just now, as I sat in the carriage, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my chest, and it was as if a voice in my head was telling me I mustn't go to the capital. Father, let's not go, please. If we do, something terrible will surely happen. The idea of rebirth was too bizarre to explain, so I dared not reveal it. Fortunately, my parents loved me dearly, and seeing me cry so bitterly, they immediately agreed. All right, we won't go, I'll just write a letter instead. Receiving the affirmative answer, I felt as if a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders, leaving me light all over. Then in the next instant, darkness engulfed my vision as the world spun violently around me, before consciousness faded. My parents and Su Jingyao's horrified and worried faces swam before my eyes. Fearing this might all be just a dream upon waking again, I clutched desperately at their sleeves before completely blacking out. You bitch, if it weren't for you, I would have been the one marrying the princess today. Qin Ruofei, you've destroyed everything for me, and don't think you'll get off easy either. If mother truly cared for me and my sister, she should atone by taking her own life, so father can remarry someone from a noble family. I'd rather have an unkind stepmother than a mother with such despicable character. It's all your fault. Why do I have a birth mother like you? If it weren't for you, I would never have been mocked by them. A merchant's daughter will always be a merchant's daughter. Resorting to such vulgar tricks, it's just pitiful for the young master and the two young mistresses. In the bitter cold of winter, I fell so ill I couldn't rise from my bed. 12-year-old Jiang Buyuan brought me a bowl of cold medicine laced with arsenic. You have to die for my sister and me to have a future. At 12 years old, he had inherited every ounce of his biological father's cold-blooded cruelty. His hand didn't tremble as he held out the medicine, his eyes already looking at me as if I were a corpse. I laughed until tears streamed down my face, then without hesitation took the bowl and drank it all. Jiang Buyuan seemed startled, taking half a step back as he stared intently at me. The poison took effect swiftly, twisting my insides as if they were being shredded. I coughed up dark blood, my breath fading to a whisper. Thank you. Jiang Buyuan's eyes widened in shock, disbelief coloring his voice. What? I say thank you for setting me free. I peacefully closed my eyes, my breath growing faint. May you and your sister get what you wish for. Xiao Fei. The familiar, gentle call roused me from my nightmare. I struggled to open my eyes, only to see my mother's anxious and worried face, her eyes brimming with unstoppable heartache. Did you have a nightmare? Don't be afraid, your mother and father are both here. She held me in her arms, gently stroking my back just like when she used to soothe me to sleep as a child. Through tear-blurred eyes, my heart, hanging precariously on a cliff, battered by wind and frost, finally settled back into place within her warm embrace and comforting words. Yes, mother and father are both here. Su Jingyao is here too, has changed, I've been reborn, and everything is a fresh start. I won't fall into the same circumstances as my previous life again. I married Su Jingyao. After receiving the reply from the Zhennan Marquis estate in the capital, my betrothal with Jiang Nanting was smoothly dissolved. The Zhennan Marquis estate didn't care whether we appeared in person. The reply letter was quite courteous. Not only did they send 500 taels of silver as compensation, but they also stated that if we ever faced difficulties in the future, we could bring the token to the capital for assistance. Father kept saying the Marquis of Zhennan's household was truly a family that understood reason. I scoffed at that. What kind of reasoning was this? This was nothing but what they owed our family, whether it was my father's life-saving grace towards the old Marquis of Zhennan or my unjustly framed previous life. Married life was no different from before. Father deliberately opened a small gate in the wall between our two households, making it convenient for me to return home anytime. Su Jingyao pursued his studies while I accompanied my parents and in-laws running the family business. At noon, he would bring me lunch at the shop, along with homemade lychee drink. In the evening when returning home, I would bring back the best-selling roast goose from the Eastern Eatery. After dinner, I would drag him up to the rooftop to watch the stars. Or we'd go to the study where he would read storybooks to me. Occasionally when I woke from nightmares late at night, opening my eyes I'd find him always by my side. I'll always be with you, Xiao Fei. He held me, as gentle and reliable as ever. That was just a dream. In reality, I'm always here, not even death can separate us. The days were simple yet fulfilling. Gradually, I stopped having nightmares about my past life and rarely recalled its painful experiences. Just when I thought my days would continue like this, I met someone all too familiar. Jiang Nanting looked no different from how he did in my past life. His expression was gloomy, his brows and eyes weary, with a turbulent mix of overwhelming fury and ecstatic reunion swirling in his gaze. Qin Ruofei, like the whisper of a demon, a chill ran through my body, and I immediately turned to flee, yet, to my surprise, he chased after me and forcefully grabbed my wrist. "Come back with me." I took a deep breath and forcefully broke free from him. "Let go of me. Who are you? I don't know you at all. How dare you lay hands on me the moment we meet?" "My lady." Su Jingyao from the tavern appeared just in time, carrying a food box. He pulled me behind him in one swift motion, casting a wary glance at the approaching figure before turning his head to ask me, "Are you all right?" Looking at his tall and sturdy frame, his face openly displaying anxiety and concern. My heart immediately settled into calm. "It's okay." Su Jingyao's furrowed brow relaxed slightly as he regarded Jiang Nanting with a grave expression. "Sir, in broad daylight, I must ask you to behave with some decency." Jiang Nanting's eyes turned bloodshot. His face twisted with the fury and humiliation of betrayal. "Qin Ruofei, you were supposed to be my wife." Young master's words are quite mistaken. In the main hall, my father suppressed his rage, his brows knitted tightly together. "My little Fei is now a member of the Su family. How could she possibly marry you? Moreover, your engagement was dissolved 6 years ago. It was agreed back then that both parties would be free to marry others without interference." Jiang Nanting's gaze remained firmly fixed on our intertwined hands, mine and Su Jingyao's. "Uncle, when the engagement was called off, I hadn't yet reached adulthood. I was still too young. Now that I have passed the age of 20, I often see my grandfather sighing in my dreams, saying I have failed a good person. To put his spirit to rest, I wish to renew the marital alliance between our families. I do not mind that Afei has been married before. I will take her as my official consort, and from now on, the Qin family shall be my proper in-laws." "Lord Jiang." Before Jiang Nanting could finish, Su Jingyao sharply interrupted him. "Your engagement with Xiaofei was called off long ago. You two have had no connection for years. What gives you the right to say you don't mind her now?" Jiang Nanting's face darkened instantly. Su Jingyao held my hand tightly, his voice softening slightly. "Xiaofei and I grew up together, sharing a deep bond. After marriage, our love only grew stronger, and we've built a blissful life together. If young Master Jiang has come to visit his father-in-law, our Su family would naturally treat him as an honored guest and entertain him with all due respect. But if the young master continues to spout nonsense and make unreasonable demands," he stood protectively in front of me, his profile resolute and sharp. "I, Su, would rather risk my life than let any villain succeed in their schemes." Jiang Nanting stared at him heavily for a long moment before suddenly breaking into a smile, brimming with disdain. "You're merely a lowly merchant. What right do you have to speak to this heir of nobility in such a manner? This heir and our Fei were betrothed since childhood. Now that she's divorced you to marry me, it's simply setting things right. Has the wind on your journey addled your wits? Young master, how can you spout such nonsense?" I could bear it no longer and glared furiously at Jiang Nanting, whose face was dark with anger at the head of the table. "Our engagement was dissolved ages ago. We agreed to go our separate ways. You marry whom you please, and I'll do the same. Has the heir changed his mind now? Even if you have, it's too late. I've been married to my husband for years, and we share a deep bond. I won't divorce him to marry someone else." "Qin Ruofei." Jiang Nanting suddenly stood up and strode toward me, while Su Jingyao positioned himself firmly behind me, refusing to budge an inch. "Move aside." Jiang Nanting spoke word by word, his eyes blazing with fury. Su Jingyao neither flinched nor retreated, his entire demeanor radiating coldness. In broad daylight, does the young master no longer care for his dignity? Jiang Nanting's face darkened further, his anger simmering as he glared at me. "I'm giving you a proper chance to marry me. Qin Ruofei, think it over carefully. Marry me, and you'll be the first-rank noble consort of the Marquis's household, destined to become the primary marchioness in the future. I will support your family. And soon your family's business will spread throughout Liangju City." For some unknown reason, Jiang Nanting's eyes flickered with traces of guilt, and his tone softened considerably. "Our Fei, I will make it up to you, and I'll also teach Yuana and Jinna to be filial to you." Enough. The humiliation and suffering from my past life surged up in my heart all at once. My breathing grew rapid, and I wished I could tear Jiang Nanting before me to pieces with my gaze. Does the young master think that I, Qin Ruofei, am the kind of person who craves wealth and status? What does being a young mistress or a marquise mean to me? I don't care for any of it. Jiang Nanting's pupils trembled, filled with disbelief. "In this life, I, Qin Ruofei, only wish to find one true love, and grow old with him, never to part. I raised my hands, fingers tightly intertwined with Su Jingyao's. I'm very lucky that such a person has been by my side from the very beginning, never leaving. No, Jiang Nanting murmured, retreating half a step as if unable to bear it. Lord Jiang, I've never owed you anything. On the contrary, my father saved your grandfather. Our Qin family has shown your marquisate immense kindness. My father never sought repayment, but that doesn't mean you can presume upon our goodwill. The engagement was broken off 6 whole years ago, we've long been unrelated. Yet you come to Liangju without reason, demanding with this condescending, charity-like attitude that I divorce my husband and remarry. Who said you have the right to look down on me for being remarried? What gives you that privilege, and in what capacity? I sneered. Or is this how the Zhennan Marquis house repays kindness? If the old Marquis in the underworld knew, he'd probably rise from the grave to teach you, his unworthy descendant, a lesson. My father turned pale with shock. Xiao Fei, blinded by rage, I pressed on relentlessly. If His Highness truly wishes to let the old Marquis rest in peace, he shouldn't be spouting such nonsense under his late lordship's banner. The best way forward is for you to leave my household, leave Liangju entirely, only then can we truly sever all ties. My words left no room for retreat. My father stepped protectively in front of me, laughing awkwardly to smooth things over with Jiang Nanting. Don't take offense, Your Highness. Our Xiaofei has always been blunt by nature, she simply speaks her mind too plainly. Seeing how late it's getting, young master should hurry back to the inn. It'll be hard to travel once it gets dark. Jiang Nanting gazed at me with complicated emotions in his eyes for a long while. So long that my father's worry and anger became completely unconcealed in his expression, before Jiang Nanting finally seemed to snap out of it. Uncle, he said, my deepest apologies. The cold wind must have addled my wits just now. The sky is growing dark, and it's too late to go out looking for an inn. I wonder if your residence might have a spare room where I could stay for a night or two. Jiang Nanting was, after all, the heir of a marquis's household. If he's willing to ease tensions, we don't necessarily have to break off relations with him, though at this point, it's almost the same as having broken off relations. Jiang Nanting spoke with such politeness that even my reluctant father had no choice but to shoot me a meaningful glance before gesturing for Jiang Nanting to follow him deeper into the estate. Of course, young master, this way. Jiang Nanting gave me one last profound look before following my father away, yet I remained on guard. Dragging Su Jingyao back to the Su residence, I firmly locked the small middle gate behind us. Then, without a moment's rest, he returned to his study to write a letter to Kyoto. I've thought about this day before. The pain and hatred accumulated over 15 years in her past life, how could they be so easily soothed? Jiang Nanting is the one who killed my father in cold blood. I could remember the hatred of killing my father for a lifetime, let alone anything else. If he had not encountered the same strange fate as I, we would have gone our separate ways, and I would have swallowed this resentment. Yet he insisted on provoking me. In that case, let's settle both old and new grudges together. By the time I finished writing the letter, it was already dark. I set down my brush and only then realized that Su Jingyao had been quietly grinding ink for me ever since I entered the study. My lord. I looked at him, feeling a bit lost and uneasy. Don't you have anything you want to ask me? Today's argument with Jiang Nanting, I'm sure he could tell something was off about me. I've never even met Jiang Nanting before, so where did all this hatred and resentment come from? Su Jingyao's eyes were clear and serene. Do you want me to ask? I froze as he approached, gently caressing my cheek. If you want to talk, I'll ask. If you don't, I won't. Xiaofei, we are one as husband and wife. As long as I know your true heart towards me, that's enough, my lord. Tears welled up in my eyes as I threw myself into his arms. How fortunate I am to have married such a husband as you. Wow, the child's cries came from outside the house. I want mama, I want papa. Mother-in-law knocked on the study door with the child in her arms. Xiao Fei, Jing Yao, mother, they're here. I quickly wiped away my tears and was about to stand up when Su Jingyao pressed me back into the chair, pulling out a handkerchief to hand to me. I'll go. He didn't know what he said to his mother-in-law, but she didn't come in. You cry. Your mother cries too. 2 little crybabies, one big and one small. He poked the child's red nose, his expression tender and doting. Shuer is crying because she can't see mother and father. Father, don't scold Shuer. Leaning against his chest, his daughter retorted petulantly, tears still glistening on her cheeks. Mother cried because she hasn't seen Shuer for so long too, right? Before he even reached me, the little one stretched out his arms toward me with all his might. I held her in my arms, nuzzling against her tear-streaked little face. Shuer is right. Mother cried because she didn't get to see Shuer. Mother don't cry, Shuer won't cry either. She earnestly wiped my tears with her sleeve in such an adorable grown-up manner that it was impossible not to smile. I couldn't resist kissing her rosy little cheeks. My sweet daughter, how can you be so adorable? Shuer immediately puffed out her little chest. Of course, after all. I'm born from mother and father, with my dearest loved ones by my side. All the resentment and unease in my heart melted away like spring rain. That night, I told Su Jingyao about my unbearable past life. So, you've been cultivating connections with Minister Chen since 6 years ago, building your network in the capital, all for today. His voice trembled, his eyes rimmed red. I nodded, then smiled at him again. At least the effort wasn't wasted. Chen Bingchun, Minister Chen, 6 years ago. He was merely the county magistrate of Yong'an County in Huaining Prefecture, Liangju, but now, he has risen to the prestigious position of Chief Secretary of the Central Secretariat, holding the third-rank title, and enjoys the deep trust of the current emperor. In his past life, his grand ambitions went unfulfilled. And he ended his days in frustration, confined to a small county town. In this life, I secretly guided him, repeatedly saving his entire family, which paved his smooth ascent to power, making him my connection and backing in the capital. Even if Jiang Nanting is the heir to a noble house, should he dare to defy the law and harm my family this time, I can ensure he never returns alive. Xiao Fei, you've suffered so much. Su Jingyao held me tightly in his arms. I felt the dampness on my forehead. My heart both tender and aching. It's not suffering. As long as I'm with you, with Shuer, and with father and mother, I don't feel any hardship, compared to the loneliness of my past life. Even the bitterness of this life tastes sweet. Next spring's imperial examination, I will surely be on the list. Then I can protect you, and you won't have to work so hard anymore. I raised my head and kissed his chin, full of attachment. I believe in you. He lowered his head, seeking my lips, and let out a soft sigh. Xiao Fei, after Jiang Nanting settled in my home, he showed no intention of leaving. These days I've stopped going to the shop and ceased visiting my parents' home, spending all my time holed up in the small courtyard shared with Su Jingyao, tending to the child, doing needlework, flipping through storybooks, or practicing the zither. Apart from not being able to go out, life wasn't much different from ordinary days. On this crisp autumn day, I lay dozing as usual on the rattan chair beneath the corridor eaves. Suddenly, a piercing cry of a child startled me, and I immediately sprang up to run out of the courtyard. Give it back, give it back. My mother made that for me. No, it's not, it's clearly my mother's. The child's shrill cries were sharp and grating. But it wasn't my daughter Shuer. It was a voice both unfamiliar and strangely familiar to me. Jiang Hanjin. The younger daughter among the son and daughter I bore in my past life. At this moment, she was tangled in a fight with Shuer, screaming hysterically for the boy nearby to help her. Brother, brother, come help me quickly. This little bitch is so strong. That boy. Jiang Boyuan, the eldest son I bore in my past life, wore an expression of impatience and irritation, unable to resist his younger sister's plea, and with Shuer striking ruthlessly and precisely. A flash of cruelty unbefitting his tender age flickered through his youthful features. Then, shockingly, he picked up a nearby stone and raised his hand to smash it toward Shuer's head. Shuer, move. Horrified, I threw caution aside and rushed forward, kicking him to the ground. The stone grazed Shuer's forehead, and blood immediately gushed out. Furious and distressed, I stepped forward, pushed Jiang Hanjin aside, picked up Shuer, and ran outside. Prepare the carriage. To the clinic, hurry. Don't be afraid, Shuer, mother is here. Don't be afraid. Just one glance at the wound shattered my heart. Yet the little one clung obediently to my neck, covering her forehead with one hand, still trying to comfort me. Don't worry, Mama, Shuer isn't afraid. Behind us. Jiang Hanjin's heart-wrenching and disbelieving screams echoed. Mother, 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 come back, I'm your daughter. A figure suddenly landed in front of me. It was Jiang Nanting, whom I hadn't seen for days. His face was cold and stern, filled with anguish as he said, Qin Ruofei, Yuana and Jinna are also your own flesh and blood. How could you lay a hand on them? Without a second thought, I kicked him square in the crotch. You get lost too. Caught off guard, Jiang Nanting doubled over with a pained groan. Qin Ruofei. I had already carried Shuer onto the carriage, which swiftly headed toward the medical clinic. Perhaps the pain was too much. As the little one couldn't help but let out soft whimpers, my heart was breaking. I couldn't bear to think what would have happened if I'd arrived a moment later. And that stone had struck Shue's head, my daughter, the child I carried for 10 months and brought into this world, cherished in my hands and pampered for 5 years, never having suffered the slightest hardship. Yet Jiang Boyuan sought to kill her, while Jiang Hanjin acted with brute force against her. And Jiang Nanting, he must have planned it all, intercepting me at that precise moment, didn't he? The carriage rolled steadily along the bluestone-paved road, but the sticky sensation of blood on my hands and Shue's agonized moans in my arms gnawed at my sanity like searing flames, consuming me bit by bit. I no longer want to dwell on why Jiang Nanting returned, and how that pair of siblings could come back with him, if not for me, who would have given birth to them in this lifetime. Since they already have their biological mother, why did they still come to Liangju searching for me? In their past life, they clearly despised my identity as a merchant's daughter, clearly wishing for my early death so they could have a noble stepmother instead. What does this behavior mean now? Shue's forehead injury was just superficial. After the doctor applied medicine and gave some instructions, I took the child back to the manor. Xiao Fei, how is Shue? Su Jingyao had gone to his teacher's house early in the morning. Judging by his current state drenched in sweat, his expression filled with anxiety and worry, he must have rushed back in a hurry. It's all right, he's asleep. Patiently, I placed the already unconscious child into his arms. Jiang Nanting and those 2 children were waiting in the main hall with my parents and in-laws. No matter what, you shouldn't have hit that child with a stone. What if I did smash it? Jiang Boyuan's face twisted with malice. That little bitch laid hands on Jinna first. Even if I'd smashed her to death, no one could say it was my fault. My parents and in-laws, wary of his status, all swallowed their anger in silence. Seeing this, Jiang Boyuan grew even more brazen. Besides, mother refuses to come back with us because of that little bitch. It'd be better if she died, only then would mother. Jiang Nanting, is this how your Marquis of Junnan's household educates its children? I strode into the main hall. What crime has my daughter committed that you'd attempt to kill her? She attacked my sister first. I was merely defending myself. Jiang Boyuan's face was full of defiance, his expression a mix of grievance and heartache. I'm not wrong, Jiang Hanjin chimed in at this point. It was Su Jingxue who attacked me first. She was too ruthless, I couldn't fight back. So brother helped me. As she spoke, she too began to sound aggrieved. Mother. I'm not wrong. You've already punished brother and me for her sake, isn't that enough? She stretched out her scraped palm, crying with both sorrow and resentment. Mother, you never used to say a single harsh word to me. Are you satisfied now that you've reduced both children to this state? Jiang Nanting's gaze was heavy, his expression filled with disappointment. I nearly laughed in anger. How could this possibly be my fault? You bad person. Don't you dare speak about my mother. Shue had woken up at some point, her eyes red-rimmed as she glared hatefully at the father and his 2 sons. That's my mother, not yours. You were the one who stole my things first. You said my mother would end up with your father sooner or later, called my dad a weak scholar, and said my family was lowly merchants. I only hit you because I couldn't take it anymore. The little girl was utterly aggrieved. I'm not some little wretch, you are. You barged into my home uninvited and tried to take my mother away. You're all villains. Get out of my house. Jiang Nanting's expression darkened, while Jiang Boyuan couldn't contain his anger and snapped. You. I turned my head and gently chided. Shue. The little girl's eyes welled up with tears of grievance, but she didn't dare utter another word. Jiang Boyuan, however, thought I was standing up for him. And his furrowed brows instantly relaxed as that familiar air of arrogance returned. Even Jiang Nanting looked surprised, his expression softening with a newfound certainty in his eyes. I beckoned to Jiang Boyuan, my tone unexpectedly gentle. Young Master Jiang, would you mind coming over for a moment? What for? Jiang Boyuan turned his face away somewhat uncomfortably, yet his body moved toward me with undeniable honesty. As he approached, I smiled at him. To avenge my son, what? Jiang Boyuan's expression changed instantly. Before he could react, I grabbed his hair and slapped his face over a dozen times. Unable to bear the pain, he raised his hands to struggle, but I seized his right wrist and twisted it viciously. Ah! Jiang Boyuan immediately let out a scream like a slaughtered pig. Everyone present was shocked, and Jiang Nanting roared in anger, charging toward me. Alas, my parents, in-laws, and all the servants in the mansion shielded me tightly behind them. Preventing him from getting close, Jiang Boyuan screamed in pain and fury. You're insane, you're the one who's insane. Without mercy, I flung him to the ground. Is it wrong for me to avenge my daughter? If I hadn't shown up this afternoon, that stone in your hand would have hit her head. Who knows if she'd even be alive now? You tried to hurt my daughter and still expect me to be gentle with you. You must be dreaming. At such a young age, you're already this vicious. I truly pity your birth mother. She went through so much to bring you into this world, yet you repay her by calling another woman mother without a second thought. Jiang Boyuan glared with resentment, gritting his teeth as he said, "You know perfectly well that you're my only child is Shuai." I looked at him, then turned my gaze to Jiang Hanjin, who stood frozen nearby. "She is the fruit of love between my husband and me. Born from my willing endurance of pregnancy's hardships and childbirth's pain, I love and cherish her, ready to give everything for her, something that won't change just because you and your sister call me mother a few times. Moreover, I could never raise children as wicked and cruel as you two, who treat human lives as worthless. Now, Jiang Shizi, take your 2 children and get out of my house, otherwise I won't hesitate to spread the word throughout Great Wei about how the Zhennan Marquis's household repays kindness with ingratitude and bullies the weak." Jiang Nanting's face darkened terrifyingly. "You wouldn't dare, and why wouldn't I dare?" I looked at him coldly, without a trace of fear. "You're about to kill my daughter, what wouldn't I dare? If you remain obstinate and try to tear our family of 3 apart, I swear I'll make you pay, even if it costs me my life." "Fine, fine." Jiang Nanting's eyes darkened as he spoke through gritted teeth. "Qin Ruofei, you're truly something. Let's go." With that, he strode out. The Hu resident servants hurriedly picked up Jiang Boyuan and followed, while Jiang Hanjin stood stunned for a moment before suddenly bursting into tears and chasing after them. "Father, wait for me." All the outsiders had left, and as I looked at my closest relatives gathered in the hall, I was suddenly overwhelmed with guilt. "I'm sorry. I acted rashly today." "What nonsense are you talking?" My mother-in-law gently interrupted me. "A mother protecting her child is instinct. Besides, it was that unreasonable Jiang heir who started it. You did nothing wrong." Su Jingyao held the child with one arm while freeing his other hand to hold mine. "No matter what happens, I'll face it together with you." Shuai's little face was pale, but her eyes sparkled brightly. Mommy was so brave just now. My heart softened instantly, and I couldn't help but curl up the corners of my lips. "All right, stop looking so glum. Even if this matter gets out, it's young Master Jiang who's in the wrong." The elder spoke sternly with a solemn expression. "The young master and lady from the Marquis residence injured Shuai, and Xiaofei retaliated by injuring their young master in return. The score is settled." For once, I felt somewhat guilty. Although Shuai's forehead injury bled profusely, it was ultimately just superficial. But Jiang Boyuan's right hand, I had snapped it clean in 2. These past few years, I've often accompanied father on business trips and deliberately hired martial arts instructors to train me in combat. Having weathered storms and hardships, I'm no longer the frail scholar of my previous life. Even if Jiang Boyuan seeks medical attention promptly and manages to have his broken wrist bone set, there's a high chance it will leave lingering damage. Jiang Boyuan is a scholar. An injured writing hand essentially cuts off his career path. Yet remembering Jiang Boyuan had initially aimed to crush Shuai to death, I feel my retaliation was far too lenient. My mother-son bond with these siblings had already dissipated in our previous life. To me now, they are merely Jiang Nanting's children, just as mean-spirited, cold-blooded, cunning, and treacherous as Jiang Nanting himself. I loathe them to the core. That night, I received a reply from the capital. Turns out, in this lifetime I never went to the capital to break off the engagement, yet Jiang Nanting's marriage to the princess still fell through. This time, lying openly beside Jiang Nanting was a maidservant named Suaming. Upon being discovered, the maidservant tearfully claimed that Jiang Nanting had taken advantage of her innocence while drunk. Jiang Nanting flew into a rage, accusing the maidservant of drugging him and climbing into his bed out of greed for wealth and status. But soon, Jiang Beiwang, the second young master of the Marquis's household, uncovered that the maidservant had a childhood sweetheart, a betrothed who had achieved top honors in the imperial examinations. They were only waiting for her to leave service so he could properly marry her as his principal wife, who would resort to drugging and climbing into bed if they could be the legitimate wife. Thus, this blame was once again pinned on Jiang Nanting. To salvage her eldest grandson's reputation, the dowager took matters into her own hands and elevated the maid to the status of a noble concubine for Jiang Nanting. Upon entering the household, the noble concubine was found to be pregnant, and 10 months later, she gave birth to twins, Jiang Boyuan and his sister. Losing the one he loved, forced to take the woman who framed him as a concubine, and having to watch helplessly as his beloved grew affectionate with his own cousin, Jiang Nanting, just like in his previous life, became utterly obsessive, Princess Jiafu was already his brother's wife, yet he repeatedly disregarded moral boundaries, shamelessly courting her favor. How could Jiang Beiwang possibly endure this? While the dowager of the Marquis's household was alive, these two cousins still exercised some restraint, but once the dowager passed away, this drama of cousins fighting over a woman instantly set the capital abuzz. Jiang Nanting was orphaned, and with the dowager gone, he lost his sole support. Jiang Beiwang, however, had both parents alive and a wife from a powerful family backing him. After years of covert and overt struggles, Jiang Nanting's position as heir apparent had become virtually meaningless. Jiang Beiwang set a trap, aiming not only for his heir position but also for his life, yet at the critical moment, Jiang Nanting seemed to have completely transformed, his entire demeanor becoming eerily calm. I realized then, Jiang Nanting, like me, must have encountered a miraculous opportunity and returned from his past life. As for Jiang Boyuan and Jiang Hanjin, these siblings had been extraordinary since birth. Unlike ordinary infants, they were not close to her, even harboring aversion toward their own birth mother, while showing deep affection for Princess Jiafu instead. That's exactly right. In their previous life, these two children were taken away from me right after birth and raised under the care of the dowager. After the dowager passed away, it was mostly their aunt, Princess Jiafu, who looked after them. For this pair of siblings, Princess Jiafu was their dream mother, a noblewoman of high birth, dignified and elegant, but people always favor their own children more. Whenever they suffered grievances at the princess's hands, these siblings would come to me. It's all your fault. All your fault. If not for you, Aunt Princess should have been mother to me and my brother. These siblings inherited Jiang Nanting's cruel and cold-blooded nature, as well as his stupidity. When they were legitimate heirs, Princess Jiafu could still raise them to be useless, paving the way for her own biological children. But in this life, they are not only illegitimate but also born of a maidservant to the inherently noble Princess Jiafu. Even using them as stepping stones for her own children would be beneath her. She would disdain them for soiling her children's shoes. So in this life, the lives of this brother and sister pair were extremely difficult, yet I still couldn't comprehend why Jiang Nanting came to Liangju, spouting such arrogant words demanding I divorce my husband and remarry. No matter how poorly he fared, he was still the legitimate heir of the Zhennan Marquis household. Having been reborn and armed with foreknowledge others lacked, could things possibly turn out worse than in my previous life? What noble lady couldn't you marry, that you had to come provoke someone like me who's already wed and mothered a child? I know you won't believe anything I say. Inside the speeding carriage, Jiang Nanting held me firmly locked in his embrace. But it doesn't matter. I'll prove it to you with actions. I'll make it up to you. Jiang Nanting lowered his head and gazed deeply at me, his voice impossibly tender. I'll love you well. My stomach twisted violently, and I vomited right onto Jiang Nanting's face. Qin Ruofei. Jiang Nanting instantly released me, both furious and exasperated. Even if you don't believe my words, you shouldn't. Wiping the filth from my lips, I sneered. Don't you love me? Is this your so-called love? Jiang Nanting froze instantly. If you truly loved me, your first reaction shouldn't have been disgust, it should have been concern about whether I was unwell, followed by urgently checking on my condition. My husband would never look at me with such revulsion. To him, my physical well-being and emotional state always come first. Enough. Jiang Nanting, torn between fury and frustration, gritted his teeth and said, so what? You're with me now anyway. And Su Jingyao, ha, he sneered. This day next year will be his death anniversary. I instantly looked up, panicked and at a loss. What have you done to him? Jiang Nanting, tell me, what have you done to them? Jiang Nanting forcefully gripped my chin, his expression sinister. You were right to make them leave Liangju City, because from the day you laid hands on me, I never intended to let any of you go. Qin Ruofei, I tried reasoning with you nicely but you wouldn't listen. Don't blame me for forcing you again. What does it matter if you remarry? What does it matter if you have daughters? You were my wife in your past life, and you should be my wife in this one too, alive or dead. Don't even think about leaving me. I sank my teeth into the fleshy part of his hand between thumb and forefinger, my eyes burning with hatred. The pain made him instinctively slap me across the face. You bitch. I was struck so hard that I crashed into the coffee table. The rapidly galloping carriage jolted violently, making me dizzy and disoriented as I struggled to steady myself. Jiang Nanting, aren't you afraid of going to hell? You knew perfectly well that in our past lives I was innocent too. It was your younger brother and Princess Jiafu who conspired to harm both you and me. I suffered your torment for 15 whole years. And my father died by your hand too, isn't that enough? I raised my face and looked at the man before me, wishing I could tear him to pieces. After finally getting a second chance at life, to spend it with the one I love, why must you come and ruin it? Was destroying one lifetime not enough for you? Must you ruin two? At the mention of my past life, Jiang Nanting's cold expression softened slightly, but when I brought up Su Jingyao, his face twisted with fury again. I told you I'd make it up to you, Fei. You're my woman, you were in our past life, and you should be in this one too. He crouched down, gently caressing my cheek, his entire being radiating a calm yet unsettling madness. I don't care that your heart belongs to someone else, nor that you've borne another man's child. Let's just consider those 6 years as time we lost. From now on, everything will return to how it should be. Once you become my princess consort, you'll understand that my love for you is no less than Su Jingyao's. With these words, he halted the carriage, lifted the curtain, and stepped out. The carriage windows were boarded up with wooden planks. Peering through the cracks, I saw dusk falling as the carriage stopped in a small grove beside the official road. Jiang Boyuan and his sister came to bring me water and food. Jiang Boyuan truly harbored hatred for me. He hung his head, his eyes dark and sinister, like a wolf cub waiting for the right moment to pounce and tear its prey apart. Unlike his silence, Jiang Hanjin tried her best to persuade me to reconcile with Jiang Nanting. Mother, both my brother and I know we were wrong, and we've changed. Wouldn't it be better for the four of us to live together happily from now on? I frowned. Who said anything about the four of us being a family? I have a husband and daughter, and I have no relation to you. Don't try to claim kinship. Jiang Hanjin, being young after all, flushed red and was on the verge of tears. Mother, both my brother and I were born to you. How can you deny us? It was you who first despised me, your birth mother, for being a merchant's daughter. It was you who first denied me. I scoffed mockingly. Counting your rebirth years, you're already 10 years old. Don't tell me a 10-year-old still lacks basic reasoning. Jiang Hanjin genuinely burst into tears. Mother, I was ignorant before, but now I've truly repented. Why must you keep pressing the matter? Father is after all the heir to the marquisate. When he inherits the title later, he'll become a first-rank marquis. Wouldn't being a marchioness be far better than being a merchant's wife? Mother, why can't you understand this? It made no sense, so I simply closed my eyes, refusing to look at these ungrateful wretches any longer. After Jiang Boyuan and his sister left, Jiang Nanting changed his clothes and came back in. His face was brimming with unrestrained joy. Su Jingyao is dead. My eyes snapped open. Jiang Nanting was still smiling, clearly overjoyed. He fell off a cliff, not even his bones remained. My face turned deathly pale as I asked with a trembling voice, "Where's my daughter, and my parents, my in-laws?" Jiang Nanting, you're inhuman. Your parents are still alive. I want to marry you. To be your loving husband. Why would I harm your parents? Though it's truly tragic about the Su couple, grief-stricken after suddenly losing their son. They took their own lives. Where was the suicide committed? Just now, Jiang Nanting's men came to report. It was clearly the Marquis's people who executed the entire Su family together. My voice trembled uncontrollably. What about Shuer, my daughter, Ah Fei? You're truly confused. Isn't our daughter Jinna right here? Jiang Nanting's expression remained unchanged, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. You killed her. She wasn't even 5 years old. You couldn't even spare a child. If you had agreed back then to divorce Su Jingyao and marry me, she could have actually lived. After all, she was your child. So adorable. Why would I have killed her without reason? But alas, you severed Yuana's hand for her sake. Ah Fei, don't blame me. It's you who didn't want her to live. Jiang Nanting's shamelessness made my head spin with rage, my entire body trembling uncontrollably. He stepped forward and gathered me into his arms with exaggerated tenderness. Don't grieve, Ah Fei. We still have Yuana and Jinna. If you don't like them, we can always have more children. Holding me close, his voice dripped with honeyed affection. Shall we have another boy and girl? The girl named her Shuer. So Shuer had returned once more. He was lost in unrealistic fantasies, completely oblivious to the unusual happenings outside the carriage. I drew the short blade from my sleeve and plunged it into the man's chest. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Jiang Nanting let out a muffled groan, his body completely stiffening. As if unable to believe his own eyes, he hesitantly called out, Ah Fei. I pushed him away, my gaze icy. Jiang Nanting, do you know, actually, I'm very glad you came to Liangju to find me. Jiang Nanting lay at my feet, emitting hoarse gasps, his gaze filled with confusion and bewilderment. I grinned at him. That way, I'll have a reason to take you down, to avenge my father's death from our past lives. I pulled out the sharpened golden hairpin from my head and thrust it cleanly into his left eye, then twisted. Listening to his heart-wrenching screams filled me with immense delight. From the day you told me you killed my father, I've thought of nothing but tearing you limb from limb and having you drawn and quartered. How dare you still have the face to ask me to marry you? I'm genuinely confused, truly baffled. How could you possibly say such nonsense as I love you? You clearly love only yourself. Everything you've done is to satisfy your selfish desires. Someone like you doesn't understand love at all and doesn't deserve anyone's love. Jiang Nanting struggled to grab me, but the dagger in his chest remained firmly in my grip. A slight twist would drive it deeper. He dared not move recklessly, only covering his eyes and letting out a heart-wrenching scream. I truly despise you, Jiang Nanting. I long to drink your blood and devour your flesh. Yet I fear your filthy, despicable nature would taint my lips and tongue. Outside the carriage, the crowd fought fiercely, while inside, I carved Jiang Nanting's flesh slice by slice. You have no idea. I knew exactly what you were going to do from the moment you left my house that day. You won't let me go, nor will you spare my family. It's you. Jiang Nanting's eyes blazed with fury. It's all because of you. I nodded calmly. Yes, it was all me. They told their parents and in-laws to pack their bags and take refuge in their rural hometown, but in truth, the carriages were filled with nimble and skilled bodyguards. Even the person who reported to Jiang Nanting was my own man. My parents, in-laws, husband, and child, all 6 family members, were hiding in the secret chamber of our mansion. I deliberately went out to be captured by Jiang Nanting's men, making him believe his plan had succeeded. Little did he know that once he took me away from Liangju City, we would encounter a gang of ruthless bandits along the way. The mountain bandits were ordered by his second brother Jiang Beiwang, with the sole purpose of exterminating him completely. Once the bandits slaughter all of Jiang Nanting's men, my people will then kill the bandits under the pretense that Jiang Beiwang is silencing witnesses, then will let a lightly wounded bandit escape to the capital to file charges. Ensuring Jiang Beiwang is brought to justice for fratricide, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, Jiang Nanting spat out blood in fury. You venomous woman, you venomous wretch. I pulled out the golden hairpin embedded in his eye and smiled. Still not as vile as you. Had I not been vigilant and borrowed men from Lord Chen, it would have been my parents lying dead today. I gouged out both of Jiang Nanting's eyes, severed the tendons in his limbs, and then castrated him. He passed out several times, only to regain consciousness, finally begging me to put him out of his misery. The clamor of battle outside the carriage had ceased, replaced by a gentle knock on the window. Miss Qin, you may come out now. Jiang Nanting lay like a heap of rotten flesh, unable to move. I stood up, planted my foot on the hilt of the blade embedded in his chest, and drove it downward with all my strength. Jiang Nanting spat out copious amounts of blood before drawing his last breath, his eyes brimming with resentment. The moment I stepped out of the carriage, the thick metallic stench of blood outside nearly choked me. Everything proceeded exactly as Miss Qin arranged. The man said deferentially. I saw Jiang Boyuan's corpse, and Jiang Hanjin standing frozen in terror, her eyes wide with shock. She was terrified out of her wits, curled up on the ground, muttering incessantly, "Don't kill me, don't kill me, don't kill me." After pondering for a moment, I quickly said, "Mute her voice and send her far away." Understood. Jiang Boyuan's death was inconsequential, but Jiang Hanjin was different. In my past life, Jiang Boyuan was already sensible and courteous when he served me poisoned cold medicine, but Jiang Hanjin was only 5 years old. I won't acknowledge her, but I can't bring myself to kill her either. Let her be an ordinary girl from a common family, and from then on, it's up to her own fate. The night was dark and the wind howled, with a chilling breeze rustling through. My lady, not far away, a tall figure holding a torch was rushing toward me desperately. Behind me, a great fire blazes, burning away all filth and ugliness. Before me, a bright lamp is lit, illuminating a smooth path for the rest of my life. The end. The second story. It has been so long since I last saw the flowers of the northern plains. At the age of 17, I made plans with my beloved to elope. I knew that as long as we remained in the northern plains for even a day, there would be no hope for us. The northern plains were too small, so small that they had to offer all their princesses to please the surrounding nations. I have never seen Princess Kitahora smile. My mother died when I was 8 years old. An eagles fought over her corpse right before my eyes. I think death was a release for her, because before me, she had already given birth to 3 princesses. My 3 elder sisters had already married into noble families as concubines before I came of age. I waited through the night in the freezing snow, but my Ji Huan never came. He betrayed our promise to each other. This man from the Central Plains was truly despicable. I once believed we loved each other deeply, but looking back now, I realize I knew nothing of his origins or background. On the day I was captured, I begged to see my father the king, but the slave girl told me he was accompanying his newly wedded queen in the garden. All these years, no new princess had been born, and my father was growing somewhat anxious. Gazing at the children running like wild winds outside the attic, I couldn't help but recall the legend, the one that had been passed down for generations across the northern plains. When the king of the northern plains fathers a princess, and on that day the heavens and earth are in chaos, with marga flowers blooming all over the sacred mountain, the northern plains will usher in its greatest era. Yet when my sisters and I were born, the skies were clear, and the sacred mountain remained perpetually covered in white snow. I waited for my wedding day in my own attic, studying the rituals of Qin during daylight hours. When night fell, the bright moonlight spilled across my window. I reached out my hand, and snowflakes landed gently in my palm. On my wedding day, crowds gathered throughout the city to watch, covering my carriage with margold flowers. They cheered as they sent me off, just as they had done with my 3 elder sisters. Another princess departed, bringing another decade of peace. Through the beaded curtain, I saw Ji Huan gazing at me from afar in the crowd. I couldn't make out his expression clearly, but I noticed a woman dressed in Central Plains attire standing beside him. At that moment, I finally understood. Perhaps he had been deceiving me all along. I married into the state of Qin from the northern plains as a peacemaking princess. The king didn't take a liking to me, and I stayed in a place called Maple Abode for a long time without anyone visiting. I began to fantasize about escaping. The palace maids assigned to serve me were named Tsuetsue and Lanjia. Tsuetsue was younger and more talkative, while Lanjia, being older, knew how to manage tasks. I didn't encounter any truly wicked people. That was fortunate. In their free time, they would teach me some simple Qin dialect. During leisure moments, I asked Lanjia why she was called by that name. At that time, Lanjia was setting out chopsticks without pausing her movements, answering me cheerfully. She said she was a wild child, sold by her parents because her looks were passable, and had no name. The palace maids who worked with her all called her that Lanjia girl. I said I wanted to give her a proper name, but I couldn't read their Central Plains script. During all those years with Ji Huan, he had always spoken in Northern Plains dialect, which was why I'd so easily believed his lies. He claimed he'd been exiled by Central Plains people and raised in the Northern Plains since childhood. He said he'd been diligently studying Northern Plains culture, hoping I could introduce him to my brother, Muriet, the future ruler of the Northern Plains. But that day when that Central Plains woman stood by his side, it felt like a stinging slap across my face. All these years, he'd never severed ties with Central Plains people, perhaps even maintained more connections than I knew. Ji Huan only taught me 2 Central Plains characters. Mingyu, bright moon. He said this character is the meaning of my name in the Central Plains. It turns out that mage means the bright, pure moon. I asked the Lan family if it would be acceptable to name her Lanyu, blue moon, but the Lan family shook their heads, saying, "You, moon, is your highness's name. You are the master, and the Lan family are servants. We dare not violate the princess's name." I explained that my name was Muermage, not moon. The Lan family gently smiled and said, "When the court officials selected Nu and Tsuetsue, they already told us you were the moon princess from the Northern Plains." So I asked her again if she had a favorite character. She said she liked the character Wei. There's a chapter called Gathering Wei in the Book of Songs, which she often heard people sing when she was young, and she loved it very much. "Then let's call her Lan Wei." Lan Wei knelt down joyfully to thank me for bestowing the name. Not seeing the ruler of Qin actually made me feel more at ease. I heard his harem doesn't have a single concubine. Could it be they're all little princesses like me, brought into the palace, neither officially infeft nor cared for, left to wither away until death? I began to entertain thoughts of escaping. Yet it's strange how strictly guarded this rear palace remains when there are only me and a few dowager consorts inside. After tapping every brick in the rear palace to confirm their solidity, I abandoned my escape plans. These palace walls dozens of jong high could effortlessly imprison a woman forever. I spent 3 months in the palace, and the only time I saw the king of Qin was when I was drinking in a pavilion. From afar, I watched his palanquin pass by, stopping before a peach blossom tree. He plucked a branch and left. I knelt in the pavilion, facing his direction, and after he departed, as if bewitched, I went to see that peach blossom tree, yet, apart from a fresh break in the branch. It was no different from any other peach blossom. In the evening, a eunuch arrived holding an imperial decree, announcing good news as soon as he entered. Reminded by Lan Wei, I knelt down. The decree stated that His Majesty had conferred upon me the title of Lady Mingyu, bestowed me with the surname Ji, and granted me residence in Wanla Palace. After the eunuchs had finished presenting the gifts, their clamorous congratulations fading as they left, I stared at the peach blossom on the table. Lost in a daze, both Tsuetsue and Lan Wei beamed with joy, only I was at a loss. I finally met the King of Qin, standing lazily by his desk. He asked me, Ji Mingyu, how have you been these days? The King of Qin was tall and handsome, with an air of authority between his brows. Unlike the men of the northern plains, he wore splendid robes and carried himself with elegance, like a falcon standing against the wind. The moment I knelt at his feet, I finally realized I was married now. I was no longer my father's daughter, no longer Mua Yait's little sister, no longer the young princess of the northern plains. No one would ever give me marguerite flowers again. Those things had truly and completely slipped away from me. I locked eyes with him, yet saw not a trace of emotion in his gaze. Only when my knees were about to give way did he lightly clear his throat and bid me rise. I replied in the Qin manner, My king, this humble concubine fares well. I thank your majesty for your concern. A hint of amusement played at the corners of his lips. That is well then. Taking my hand, he asked whether I could read. I shook my head, ashamed of this strange man's touch, and gently withdrew my hand. He gave me a surprised glance but said nothing, merely picking up his brush to write 3 characters on the paper. Ji Changing, my name. Ji Changing was different from my father and brothers, or even Ji Yu Huan. His thoughts were always unpredictable. Since that time in the study when Ji Changing taught me to write his name, he seemed convinced that my intelligence might be below average. He often summoned me to the study to sit beside him while he reviewed memorials. Midway through, he would ask me which characters on the bamboo slips I recognized. I pointed at up and withdrew my hand. Ji Changing appeared to wait for me to continue, so I pointed at its opposite, down. Ji Changing ordered me to copy the 3-character classic 20 times. She also had Tsuetsue read it aloud to me by my side. When we weren't in the study, we'd drink tea and chat beneath the trees of Wanla Palace. I asked Lan Wei, why are there no other consorts in the palace? Lan Wei told me that when the king was still crown prince, there had been 2 beauties, but neither lived long enough to see his ascension to the throne. New consorts wouldn't enter the palace until the next year's selection ceremony. Back then, I widened my eyes, thinking how utterly unbelievable it was. I thought I didn't care about these things. I always believed that one day I would return to the northern plains, fiercely scold Ji Yu Huan, and then embrace my elder brother. As time passed, Ji Changing began to hold me. He cradled me in his arms, reciting poetry I couldn't understand, though I didn't comprehend the words. I roughly grasped that the poem's meaning was, the peonies of Luoyang are beautiful, and one day I must go see them. At that time, rain was still falling outside the window, and the palace attendants quietly lowered the curtains along the outer corridor to prevent the rain from splashing in. Ji Changing rested his chin on my shoulder. I couldn't tell if his eyes were closed, and said, if we move the capital to Luoyang, what will become of Mingyu? Is Luoyang very far from here? Very, very far, he replied. Luoyang lies west of here, even farther than Beiyuan. But for me, it makes no difference. He fell silent. I tilted my head to look at him, noticing the dark circles under his eyes, and immediately regretted saying those words. He still held me like that, writing poems I couldn't understand. After a while, he said, when the rain stops, shall I take you to the garden to admire the flowers? But a garden after the rain would surely be strewn with withered blossoms and broken willows. I didn't dare say it, just nodded silently. A long time passed, perhaps a month, perhaps 2, before the king finally favored me with his attention. Yet this was no great honor. His eyes told me as much. I was neither his first woman nor would I be his last. He still held me while writing and recited poetry to me, but he never again let me see the memorials, because I had already learned all those characters. He asked me if I could sing him a tune. I replied, a tune from the northern plains, would that do? I only know tunes from the northern plains. He said he wanted to hear a tune from Qin and hoped I would learn it, so I learned Qin melodies. The courtesan Liang who taught me was already in her 40s. She said I had talent, that my singing was as beautiful as a phoenix's cry. I chuckled cheerfully and said, really, no one's ever praised me before. Liang Leji narrowed her eyes unhappily. I finally mastered the Qin melodies. and Liang Leji at last declared me her final disciple. I sang for Ji Changjing. After listening, he swept me up in his arms, saying I sang beautifully, and added how wonderful it would be if I could learn the Qin dances too. As he spoke, his fingers were playing with strands of my hair, tracing a circle on my shoulder along their length. Heat crept up my spine and flushed my face, so I quickly agreed, okay. I buried myself in his embrace. Too shy to speak, and so I went back to Lin Wuji to learn the Qin dance. Lin Wuji was Liang Leji's good friend, also over 30 years old. She was exceptionally beautiful and alluring, and I was very curious why she hadn't become a consort. However, Ji Changjing's father, that previous king of Qin, had been buried 2 years earlier, so no one could give me the answer. Lin Wuji was a woman from Jiangnan, and her figure was light and graceful. She didn't start by teaching me to dance, but rather how to soften my posture. Those movements were too painful, and I nearly gave up. By the later stage, when I could finally touch my toes raised overhead with my hands just like her, 3 months had already passed. The first song we learned was composed specifically for me by my master, Liang Yueji. The lyrics were folk verses, Qin songs, wild vines in the field, wild vines in the field. Heavy with morning dew, there is a beautiful maiden, with clear and graceful eyes. When I finished learning the entire dance, my 2 masters sat side by side, sighing in unison. Liang Leji said I was the most special child she had ever seen, with my jade-green eyes that clearly marked me as a child from the grasslands. I retorted, that's not true at all. The northern plains are covered in snow for a long time, and only for a short period do they become grasslands. She quickly exclaimed, oh dear, this child knows how to talk back. I don't want her anymore. Lin Wuji said, if you don't want the child, then I won't take her either. I cooed playfully, you can't refuse, Marge likes you both. When we left the music palace, the sky had darkened, with only the faint glow of lanterns at the palace gates. After walking for a while, I suddenly stopped and turned back. The 2 of them were still watching me from afar beneath the palace gates. My tears suddenly fell. I didn't cry the day Ji Huan betrayed me, nor the day I left the northern plains. I didn't shed a tear during those 3 months of neglect in Fengman Courtyard. But today, for some reason, it suddenly struck me. It had been so long since anyone had loved me. Tears then streamed down my face like rain. The first day of the 10th month, this was my first New Year celebration in the Qin state. Ji Changjing held me as we watched palace servants perform with dragon lanterns from the highest palace wall. A massive fireball exploded in the air, sending shimmering light across the sky. With a startled cry, I was pulled into his embrace. I heard his voice drifting faintly, as if promising me that every year hereafter would be like this, holding me tightly, never letting me be afraid. But I won't be afraid forever. I closed my eyes and softly murmured in agreement. At the state banquet, I performed Wild Vines Grow for him. The distant sound of the zither playing drifted over, gradually blending with my dance. In the eyes of those ministers and envoys, I saw astonishment. I thought this dance of mine must have captured 7 or 8 parts of the essence of Qin's dance. As the music ended, I returned to my seat. Ji Changjing raised his wine cup to me, and I responded in kind. My gaze swept past the envoys' seats, only to find the northern plains seat empty. Later, Ji Changjing told me that while I was changing my dance attire, the northern plains envoy, unable to hold his liquor, had stepped out to sober up. I thought of those zither sounds. There had never been a central plains man among the ministers of the northern plains, except for Ji Huan. The lively days always passed swiftly, and soon, the envoys began leaving Qin one after another. Someone sent me a packet of dried margold flowers through a messenger. Furious, I threw it onto the table, but after a long while, I couldn't resist asking Lan Wei to store it in my dressing case. Ji Changjing embraced me again in that same manner, writing poetry, reciting verses, taking me to the gardens, and I would accompany him in painting, singing Qin melodies for him, dancing Qin dances. Ji Changjing was exceptionally skilled at painting, yet his works never depicted my eyes. He said he couldn't capture the jade-green hue, so he left them blank. From then on, he sent people searching for jade-green inkstones, but after much searching, none could match the green of my eyes. As I gradually forgot the melodies and dances of the northern plains, my heart also wandered away from Ji Huan and settled upon Ji Changjing. I began to believe he would give me the stable life I desired, the care I longed for, and love, yes, love, the genuine love I had never received before. Would you love me? A pure yet flawed Ji Mingyu, with all my virtues and faults. He often said I was his one and only crescent moon. For this reason, he adorned my Wanla palace with several luminous pearls. When night fell, it truly resembled moonlight pouring down. Love can make one timid. When I passed by the garden again and noticed that the peach blossom tree which had flourished so beautifully last March had been uprooted and replaced with another tree, my heart inexplicably panicked. I asked Lan Wei, "Do I look like a favored concubine like this?" An answer surfaced in my heart. Indeed, I didn't. I resembled more his daughter, his plaything, his confidant. He took pleasure in teaching me to become a person of Qin, delighted in my companionship, and reveled in the sense of subservience I brought him. Yet none of this was right. In his eyes, I have always been Lady Mingyu, never Mua Mage. Lan Wei smiled to comfort me, saying there would never be a concubine more favored than I. Yet reality showed me otherwise. The day of the imperial selection arrived in a flash. These women were entirely different from me. They were all proper noble ladies from Qin's aristocratic families or daughters of high-ranking officials, truly graceful and dignified, with every refined manner, and each one accomplished in music, chess, calligraphy, painting, singing, and dancing. Not to mention Ji-changing, even I was dazzled by the sight. The selection concluded with 6 women entering the palace. 1 was granted the title of beauty, 2 became virtuous ladies, while the rest were all designated as 8th-rank consorts. That beauty came from the prestigious Zhao family of Qin. Lady Zhao needed no instruction from the king. She was already accomplished in both talent and appearance. She understood Qin melodies and dances better than I did, not only comprehending the king's poetry but also capable of composing matching verses. If it can be said that the king found the joy of cultivation in me, then in consort Zhao. He found the thrill of pursuing a kindred spirit. Consort Zhao's name was also more meaningful than mine, Lingyi. Truthfully, I didn't harbor much resentment toward Zhao Lingyi. My bitterness was directed more at Ji-changing's fickleness. Yet when he lay beside me, sighing about how exhausted he was, I found myself unable to hold on to that resentment. I know that the Qin state is vast, larger than 5 northern plains combined. And any noble family or prestigious clan in Qin could cause significant harm if they harbored rebellious intentions. I remember the moment I first knelt beside him. The ruthlessness between his brows suggested he had been wrestling with these matters for a long time. So, at dawn, I would once again watch him love someone else, embrace another, and recite poetry to them. In the spring of the following year, Zhao Lingyi and I became friends. The apricot blossoms in the garden bloomed. This was my first time seeing them. Where peach trees once stood, apricot flowers now covered the branches. It's not much different from peach blossoms, really. It's just that Ji Huan described apricot blossoms to me over and over as being so exceptionally beautiful that I couldn't help but look forward to seeing them. So this is Ji Huan's favorite flower. In an instant, my memory flashed back to the wedding carriage when I was married off. The woman sitting beside Ji Huan wore robes embroidered with apricot blossoms. Tsue interrupted my thoughts, asking if I wanted to pick some to arrange in the palace. I waved my hand and declined. No need, have someone shovel it away. This was the first time I exercised my privilege as a favored concubine in the Qin Palace's rear court. Zhao Lingyi said with a smile that she didn't like apricot blossoms either. They looked fickle at first glance. Another year, another imperial selection. Ji-changing's love for Zhao Lingyi soon found its transition onto the newly arrived Zhao Bazi. This Zhao Bazi was from the same clan as Zhao Lingyi, her cousin born of a concubine, named Qingqiu. She was different from us. She was the king's childhood sweetheart. When the king was still a boy of 12 or 13, she would follow behind him. Calling him brother Changing, she didn't need to spend as much time as I did, or as Zhao Lingyi did, singing or dancing. Ji-changing already loved her deeply. Zhao Lingyi said that in the palace, indulging in romance was a grave taboo. Then make me some pastries. Once I'm full, I won't love him anymore, I told her. Zhao Lingyi burst into laughter. Do you even realize that the woman standing before you is the most perfect woman in the entire Qin state? I could read at 3, dance at 6. And at 12, disguised as my brother, I swept first place in music, calligraphy, and painting at the Tushure banquet. Forget pastries, I could serve you an entire state banquet. Who is that Qi? It was young Master Huan, a mathematical genius, but he fell ill and passed away. Zhao Lingyi is truly remarkable. Now I feel that Ji-changing isn't worthy of her. During idle moments, Zhao Lingyi would tell me about the world outside. She said that outside there were merchant caravans from the south, whose mounts were tall and mighty, trumpeting loudly, with long trunks that could curl up to eat fruit by themselves. She also said that whenever handsome men appeared on the streets, the girls would pelt them with embroidered pouches, so those good-looking men rarely ventured out anymore. So I told her in return that on the northern plains, a man would only take one wife, before marrying a woman. The man would hunt a fierce beast to prove to her father and brothers that he was capable of taking good care of her. I added, though, that the northern plains were too small, with only marga flowers growing there, leaning against each other. Zhao Lingyi and I talked endlessly. As Zhao Qingqiu gained favor, more and more idle women from the rear palace joined our storytelling circle. Among them were noble ladies Chen and Shu, who, like the dancer Lin, hailed from prominent Jiangnan families, as well as noble ladies Huang and Shen, who were originally aristocrats from Chang'an. They didn't call me Lady Mingyu, they called me Maggie. Every April is the month when palace consorts meet their families, but as a princess sent for political marriage, naturally I have no one to meet. Only a pile of imperial gifts laboriously transported to the northern plains, telling its people that I'm still alive and peace remains between the two nations. Such was the fate of my elder sisters too. Even more so for my predecessors. The princesses of the northern plains have always endured this. Long before my time, my aunt Muashin had married Ji Changjing's father. At this thought, I couldn't help but summon Tsuetsue and Lanwei, instructing them to take me to see where my aunt had lived. That palace now lay in ruins. After aunt married into the family, she enjoyed great favor from the late king, but her happiness was short-lived. She fell ill and died within a few years. After which the late king forbade anyone from occupying those quarters. After Ji Changjing ascended the throne, the place received even less attention and was left abandoned ever since. Entering the palace, traces of Beiyuan were indeed everywhere. The curtains were embroidered with Beiyuan patterns, the pillars carved with mega flowers, and even the small ornaments on the tables were the white-tailed foxes unique to Beiyuan. As I sat there, for some reason, I suddenly felt an overwhelming urge to burst into laughter. Instead, a wave of nausea surged up. I'm pregnant. In my first year here, when I received favor every day, I didn't conceive. In my second year, when I loved Ji Changjing, I didn't conceive. Yet now, when I wanted to casually pretend he didn't exist, I ended up pregnant. Ji Changjing came to see me excitedly. This was his first child. Although his two concubines had been pregnant when he was still the crown prince, none had come to term. And in this year of his 28th, he was finally going to become a father. It had been a long time since I'd looked at him carefully, and now as he reflected in my pupils, he no longer appeared as misty and distant as when I first saw him at 17. He crowned me as his queen. I became the first foreign queen in Qin's history, drawing impeachment petitions from many court officials. Only Chancellor Zhao raised both hands in approval. Zhao Lingyi gently patted my back. Trying to ease my discomfort, Zhao Lingyi was promoted to lady, while beauties Chen and Shu were also elevated one rank each. When they came to congratulate me, they casually mentioned how Zhao Qingqiu had climbed from 8th rank to lady in just 1 year. That was quick. I have no parenting experience. But my two mentors do. They sent word for me to send a maid to learn from them. Lan Wei suggested sending Tsuetsue, as she still needed to take care of me. Tsuetsue trotted off eagerly and returned with a large bundle. Inside was a dance dress, meant for me to wear after giving birth. They had embroidered it for a long time. I pressed them for answers. Tsuetsue said they had already left the palace, and by now the carriage was beyond Chang'an. I was speechless. Ji Changjing seemed to have had a change of heart. Sometimes he would dine with me in the evening, and when I urged him to leave, he would step out only to return moments later, saying, "My dear Mingyu, it's raining, let this lord stay a while longer." He groped his way onto the bed and held me as we slept, yet only he fell asleep, and the name he called out in his dreams wasn't mine, it was Zhao Qingqiu. If he loved Zhao Qingqiu so much, why did he make me his queen? I couldn't understand him. Later, I guessed it was because Zhao Qingqiu's mother was a courtesan. She was lucky to enter the palace at all, let alone become queen. Among the remaining consorts, only I lacked maternal family support, yet bore the seemingly dignified title of a diplomatic princess. Once when I went to seek him in his study, he wasn't there. Only a newly painted portrait of Zhao Qingqiu lay drying on his desk. When he used to paint me long ago, he promised jade green hues as beautiful as my eyes, colors I waited for endlessly but never received. Now I'm merely blades of grass beside her flourishing bloom. Time always passes so quickly. Since I became pregnant, Zhao Lingyi stopped making pastries and started learning tailoring instead. She said she loves challenging herself with new things. However, the Chen and Shu beauties from Jiangnan weren't convinced. Their Suzhou embroidery was unparalleled, and they were determined to compete with Zhao Lingyi. By my 6th month of pregnancy, Zhao Qingqiu was also with child. She was conferred the title of Virtuous Phoenix Consort and showered with countless gifts. Another year at the state banquet, I finally saw Zhao Qingqiu in person. During the selection process before, I hadn't noticed, but today I could see she was truly beautiful, gentle and lovely. Just sitting there, she seemed bathed in moonlight, though the look in her eyes still resembled her cousin Zhao Lingyi. At the envoy's table, my brother sat, Mua Yite. Greetings to the King of Qin and the Queen. My brother bowed to us. By the grace of heaven, at the birth of my little princess, Mua Nei, celestial omens appeared. The people of the northern plains and I rejoiced together, and I share this joy with the Queen. My brother spoke to me. I smiled as I translated my brother's words to Ji Changjing. My brother sent his greetings to us, saying the birth of his little princess was a joyous occasion that he wanted to share with us. Ji Changjing glanced at the interpreter beside him, who nodded in confirmation. Only then did Ji Changjing seem to understand, raising his wine cup toward my brother. My brother reciprocated by raising his own cup. I understood my brother's meaning. The princess who would truly change the northern plains had been born, and I needed to be ready to assist at any moment. Consort Feng smiled like a crescent moon, gently reminding me that the wine had gone cold and drinking it would be bad for my health. I said, "Thank you," hastily. I cradled the wine in my hands, feeling it still slightly warm before taking a sip. A year later, Ji Changjing took me to see the Dragon Lantern Parade again. Only this time, I truly couldn't bring myself to smile, because his second year was given to someone else. This was no longer proof of love to him. Yet when he embraced me once more, I couldn't help but close my eyes. "Don't be afraid, Mingyu. This king will always stay by your side." My response was unconsciousness, and the crimson blood flowing beneath my legs. My child is gone. When I woke up again, Lan Wei and Kui Kui were both crouched by my bed, quietly sobbing. It was dark all around, and not a soul was in sight. Kui Kui held my hand and asked how I was, if I wanted some water. Lan Wei adjusted the pillow for me. The weight on my stomach was gone. I realized it the moment I woke up, though I'd been so careful. Suddenly I remembered Zhao Qingqiu's delicate smile at the state banquet, that glass of wine. I screamed and cried until my voice gave out. When I woke again, it was already 2 days later. I asked Tsuetsue, "Where is Lingyi?" Tsuetsue said, "Madame Zhao went to scold Consort Fengxian, and Consort Fengxian's pregnancy was somewhat startled. The king and several imperial physicians are all over there. Madame Zhao has now been demoted to beauty and confined for 3 months." I lay staring at the canopy above the bed. For some reason, I suddenly remembered that day when he stood lazily by the desk and asked me, "Ji Mingyu, how have you been these days?" I should have answered then, "I'm not surnamed Ji, nor am I Mingyu. I am Muermage, Princess Muermage from the northern plains. I've not been well, so, let me leave, or perhaps even earlier." I shouldn't have looked to see what was different about that peach tree. What difference could there be? It was just a branch that someone had broken off. My heart seemed to have a hole torn through it, howling with wind, the pain unbearable. I lay in bed until the month of confinement was over. It was a long time before Ji Changjing came to see me. Just once. He didn't ask if it hurt, nor did he ask if I was feeling better. He just said, "Don't drink anymore, see. He knows everything." I told Lan Wei to find me some needlework to do, so I began to embroider, to sew. I made Ji Changjing a pouch adorned with 2 fluffy rabbits, utterly adorable. When he came to see me again, I fastened the pouch to his waist. Just as he reached to remove it, I caught his hand, leaning against his shoulder. I asked softly, "They say women of the Central Plains embroider pouches for those they admire. Brother Changjing, could you spare me just a sliver of your affection? Even the tiniest bit would suffice. I won't compete with Consort Fengxian, could you?" For his sake, I guided his hand to rest upon my belly. Ji Changjing remained silent for a long time before carefully pulling me into his embrace. After Zhao Lingyi was released, she nearly wanted to twist my head off upon hearing I'd embroidered a pouch for him. As the Empress, I restored Zhao Lingyi to her former position, the second time I exercised my authority. Zhao Lingyi no longer had to sew garments and resumed her beloved hobby of making pastries. During those times when Zhao Qingqiu and Ji Changjing's relationship grew somewhat weary, Ji Changjing would also come to sit in my palace. I danced for him in the blue gown left behind by my masters, singing Wild Vines Grow Alone when no one played music for me. At last, I caught a glimpse of infatuation flickering in his eyes. When the dance ended, I fell into his embrace. I asked him, "Would you like to see Kitahora's dance?" Ji Changjing hooked my chin, kissing me lightly as the roaring rain drowned out his voice. Yet I heard him clearly. He said, "Bright moon. You'll have another child." Zhao Lingyi told me that her uncle, General Zhao Yang, the guardian of the nation, would soon return to the capital after his campaign. Concubine Chen and concubine Jiang also mentioned that someone in the Jiangnan region had been secretly stockpiling grain, suggesting troubled times ahead. While they were saying these things, Lan Wei and I were discussing the rewards for the palace concubines. It was almost Ji Changjing's birthday, and by tradition, a grand distribution of gifts was due. The officials from the Ministry of Imperial Treasury dared not make decisions on their own, yet they came to ask me, the illiterate queen, for guidance. Clearly, I was nothing like his queen. Consort Fengxian gave birth to a child, a plump, full-term baby boy. Ji Changjing named him Ji Huijin. When Ji Huijin was just over a year old, I became pregnant. And it wasn't just me, there was also Lady Jiang and 2 other concubines of the 8th rank. Ji Changjing, pressured by the noble families, had no choice but to distribute his favors equally. Sometimes, watching him recline in the rocking chair with his eyes closed, I even think that he just wants to be an ordinary husband, an ordinary father. But why must he confine me? These palace walls, dozens of feet high, fill me with dread whenever I look at them. I often have nightmares in them. I grow old and die in this palace, or perish from illness with no one to care. He opened his eyes and gazed at me tenderly, promising to love my child as much as he loved Ji Huijin. But I knew it was all a lie. Once he stepped out of Wanla Palace, none of those words would hold true. In the 6th year of my time in the palace, the 7th spring of the king's reign, my son, Ji Yanhe, was born. He was very well behaved, spending most of his time sleeping in his wet nurse's arms. When awake, he would gaze at me or Zhao Lingyi with his dark, shining eyes, always craving to be held. Concubine Jiang also took He into her arms, saying she wanted to soak up his auspicious energy in hopes of bearing a healthy and obedient child herself. Whether it would be a prince or princess didn't matter, healthy was all that counted. Yet that day inevitably arrived. The palace maids whispered that noble consort Feng had forced concubine Jiang to embroider 100 birds tapestry overnight. When I arrived, Ji Changjing was carrying the unconscious Zhao Qingqiu who had fainted from fright. I passed by him without a word. Lady Jiang had died, and the newborn child couldn't be saved either. Several favored concubines sat there wiping their tears, but only Lady Chen threw herself at my legs, wailing uncontrollably. She came from Jiangnan with Lady Jiang, just 16 years old at the time, but now she was left all alone, after Lady Jiang was buried. Both the 8th rank ladies flattened their bellies, their children were gone, though they themselves remained. The palace felt like it was draped in thick curtains, suffocating everyone beneath them. To Zhao Qingqiu, only women who weren't loved needed to fight for favor. During those days, I often had nightmares night after night, not knowing who would be next, nor what fate awaited my Yanhe, and so, I resolved to fight for my place. Fortunately, over these years, Ji Changjing often carried the sachet I gave him. Every princess who left the northern plains became a favored concubine without exception. They all said women from the northern plains were beautiful. Perhaps so. I'm more inclined to believe that specially treated marga flowers could make men foolishly infatuated. That was originally my brother's command, hoping to turn the Qin king into an idiot. But now, I desperately wish Ji Changjing would turn into a fool. Ji Changjing claimed to love me when he was in my palace, but who's to say he didn't declare the same affection in others' chambers? One year, I saw the person who brought me marguerite flowers even shrouded in a black cloak. I recognized Ji Yuhuan at first glance. He stood in the wind and snow, gazing at me intently, lost in thought, perhaps reminiscing about days gone by. I turned and walked away. I've learned countless dances, countless Qin melodies. I no longer need my master's guidance. Ji Changjing's moments of clarity grew increasingly rare. Sometimes he couldn't distinguish between me and Zhao Qingqiu, who was his Chua, who was his bright moon. They say when he was intimate with Zhao Qingqiu, he called her little crescent moon, and she drove him out in fury. Ji Changjing came to me in a daze, and I took him in with open arms. I patted his back gently, just as I would when coaxing Yanhe to sleep, humming a soft lullaby, as if trapped in a nightmare. He kept murmuring over and over, "Why have you changed?" The early autumn of the 17th year of the king's reign, the state of Chu launched an invasion, and all the hidden calamities lurking beneath the surface finally came to light. Zhao Yang led the troops but suffered 3 consecutive defeats, for which he was held accountable and executed at Wutong Pass. His severed head was presented to Chu as a gesture of submission. Zhao Lingyi gnashed her teeth in fury, cursing Ji Changjing. Over the years, the money spent on Zhao Qingqiu's birthday celebrations had far exceeded military expenditures. While Chu's soldiers wielded state-of-the-art equipment, Qin was still using outdated weapons from 20 years ago. The state of Chu demanded a political hostage from Ji Changjing. Thus did Yang He depart from me. Perhaps it was for the best. My second elder sister was noble consort Huang of Chu. With her care, his days wouldn't be too difficult. As for me, I was finally free of all lingering concerns. I have become the utterly depraved demon queen. I knew that specially prepared Margosa flowers required only a fingernail's worth to induce delirium, idiocy, or madness. Thus all these years, I've held deep admiration that Ji Changjing could remain lucid while constantly wearing the sachet I personally embroidered. But now, it ends here. I finally bewitched Ji Changjing. In truth, we all knew my Yenhe would never harm anyone. Yenhe had been frailer than other children since birth. How could he possibly have pushed Jihuai Jin, who was so much bigger than him, into the pond? But after Zhao Qingqiu knelt there wailing and making a scene, Ji Changjing lost his composure and replaced Jihuai Jin with Ji Yenhe as the hostage promised to the state of Chu, perhaps to make it up to me, or perhaps because Zhao Qingqiu had broken his heart. He stopped visiting her palace. Pitifully, he told me this would be the last time. That he would never see her again. At that moment, I held him, wanting to pat his back as I used to. But for some reason, I felt all my strength drain away. I could no longer forgive him. I hadn't been able to forgive him for a long, long time. I always ask him, "Do you love me?" And he would tirelessly answer me again and again that he loves me most. In the year I turned 35, he decided to build a moonlight tower for me. I don't like apricot blossoms, so we won't plant apricot blossoms. All the concubines in the imperial harem were sent out of the palace, and Zhao Qingqiu was also forced to become a nun, never to enter the palace again. Before leaving, Zhao Lingyi hugged me and said that if I had time, I must visit her. I replied that I certainly would, and so, her carriage swayed and jolted as it left the palace. The capable nobles of Qin were already preparing their escape routes, while memorials of remonstrance flew in daily from every corner of the land. Today a censor might dash himself to death in protest. Tomorrow 10 scholars might be buried alive. Both Ji Changjing and I knew that Qin's days were numbered, and that we would soon join the spirits in the underworld together. 2 years later, the Moonlight Tower remained only half-built. Ji Yu Huan's sword pressed against Ji Changjing's neck, forcing him to write the abdication edict. Yang He was brought back to the Qin state and became the new king. Meanwhile, Ji Yu Huan took on the role of imperial tutor. Years passed, one after another. Yang He established an empress, a girl from Zhao Lingyi's clan. Over the years, Zhao Lingyi had long since remarried. Becoming a wife and mother, she often came to the palace to keep me company, so I wouldn't feel too lonely. Consort Chen also returned to Jiangnan, busy taking over the family's textile business. Only I remained in the barren palace, year after year, through summer cicadas and winter snow, evening rains and occasional sunshine. It's been so very long since I last saw the flowers of the northern plains. Ji Yu Huan visited the northern plains and told me upon his return that the territory has now expanded outward by 9 cities under the Queen's leadership. He also mentioned that the task entrusted by Prince Mua Yite decades ago to protect Her Highness the Princess has been fulfilled, as has the mission to properly educate young Master Yang He. Finally, he asked if we could start anew, introducing himself as Ji Changheng. Prince Huan should have died over 40 years ago. I left the Qin royal palace. Ji Yenhe was reluctant to let me go, yet ultimately chose to respect my decision. Announcing to the outside world that the Empress Dowager had passed away from illness, for the first time, I visited someone as a guest, staying at Zhao Lingyi's residence for 2 months. Zhao Lingyi was currently troubled by her eldest son's marriage arrangements, and upon my arrival, she eagerly sought my advice on the matter. I smiled and said, "Every generation has its own blessings. What's meant to be will come." Zhao Lingyi pinched me and said, "The queen became pregnant last month, leading to a general pardon across the land. You must be overjoyed." I smiled without saying a word. Later, I fulfilled my wish to travel to many places, including the hometowns of Consort Jiang and Consort Chen, the Jiangnan region. Without the proper travel documents, I could no longer return to the northern plains, but at the frontier town, I caught a distant glimpse of the sacred mountain, its eternal snow, and the endless fields of marguerite flowers stretching at its foot. Finally, I returned to the capital and opened a tea shop in the city. In idle moments, Ji Yu Huan would tell me stories of his past. Ji Changhuan was the youngest child of the king, born to Lady Xing. His mother was young and beautiful, bearing a striking resemblance to Lady Xin. Thus, he was the most favored by the king. Ji Changhuan was still young then, unaware of the need for modesty, and strove to be first in everything. But he didn't know that his older brothers had already been fiercely competing to become the crown prince, so he was drugged and thrown out of the palace. At that time, his father's illness was worsening day by day, and he could no longer control his children, perhaps to spite them. In the last year of his father's life, his youngest brother, Ji Changjing, was named the crown prince. I hid in a merchant's fur goods and went to the northern plains, where I met you. I knew you would eventually marry into the Qin state for a political alliance, so I approached you. At the age of 17, I watched you standing in the icy snow waiting for me. All through the night, I desperately wished for the night to pass quickly, because every moment I longed to rush out, take your hand, and elope with you far away. 2 years after you married into the Qin state, your brother indeed spared no effort to arrange a new identity for me there, as I had hoped. I returned to Qin with my new identity, starting as a lowly soldier. I wait for an opportunity every year, until Zhao Yang passed away. I became a young general in the inner court's royal army, and finally, I could see you day and night as I wished. I listened quietly to those truths I had never known. When I saw Zhao Qingqiu, I knew you would lose, because no matter how much he loved you, he would never love you more than himself. In his heart, Zhao Qingqiu was himself. Zhao Qingqiu, like him, came from humble origins and, like him, was ostracized and bullied from childhood. Back then, Zhao Qingqiu always followed behind him, calling him brother, changing sweetly at every turn. He then made up his mind that no matter what happened in the future, he would take good care of Zhao Qingqiu. So that's how it was. I couldn't help but let out a long sigh. The end. Mid-Autumn Lantern Festival. Like most people, I carried a lantern outdoors to join in the festive atmosphere, amidst the crowd. Someone locked eyes with me. He wore outdated ceremonial robes, with a pouch at his waist embroidered with 2 rabbits snuggling together. He carried no lantern, nothing at all. The man I loved most never once called me by my true name in his entire life. Extra chapter. Ji Changjing. At last, my life is coming to an end. I was born in April when apricot blossoms were in full bloom, my mother being the unfavored concubine Ying. Among all the students, the tutor always described me as a feeble piglet. And my elder brothers took delight in it. It seemed no one cared for me, as if fate regarded me as its sworn enemy, until my younger brother Ji Changheng was born. His mother was no more beautiful than mine, yet she gained father's favor merely because she bore a slight resemblance to Lady Xin. That Lady Xin came from the distant northern plains, where women were said to be exceptionally beautiful and became favored consorts wherever they went. Lady Xin was no exception. She was father's most beloved woman. She loved to dance the northern plains dance, those movements like dreams that tightly ensnared me. I knew it wasn't her fault, yet I still felt indignant for my mother, for she had once been the most famous dancing girl in Qin. Had it not been for those northern plains dances, I believe everyone at father's birthday banquet would have been dazzled by mother's Qin-style dancing. I resented her so much that when everyone praised her emerald green eyes, I turned my head away and refused to look at her. Later, mother often drowned her sorrows in drink. I watched as she took the wine cup, calling out father's name. Later, when my mother fell seriously ill, it was Lady Xin who brought the royal physician to treat her. I didn't know whether I should hate her or not. Her emerald green eyes suddenly came close to me, gazing deeply into mine, in an almost childlike tone. She asked my father, the king, "Can this child become your crown prince?" In the past, a woman who spoke such words would have bled enough to flow from Wanla Palace all the way to Yong Lane, but father didn't even glance at me, just coaxed her by saying, all right. Lady Xin passed away during the year my mother gradually recovered. No one knew why. Father publicly declared that Lady Xin had died of illness. Ji Changheng was showered with affection from birth and gradually replaced me as the target of our brother's bullying. But he didn't care, because his mother consort could make those dull-witted elder brothers suffer with just a single word. Zhao Qingqiu appeared at this very moment. Her mother came from a brothel, making her the least favored among all the officials' daughters. She clung to me as if I were her lifeline. She needed me constantly, using her pitiful eyes, calling me tenderly brother, changing to entangle me. It was even more suffocating than those northern plains dancers from back then. Does she love me? I don't know. It was just the recklessness of youth when I promised her I would always protect her and give her the best. Those were my most turbulent years. Later, my mother died, and my father was not long for this world. Ji Chonghuan's mother, that foolish woman, still didn't realize, without the king's favor, a stupid woman like her with no support from noble families was nothing but a paper tiger. Her son was soon exiled as well, 1 year before father's passing. I was crowned crown prince. Meanwhile, the most powerful noble family of Qin, the Zhao clan, approached me. They promised me their covert support, on the condition that my future queen would come from the Zhao family. I agreed, yet suddenly, I no longer understood Zhao Qingqiu. I couldn't see through her anymore. If the entire Zhao family could support me because of her, were those fragile appearances of hers, those tears, real or fake? I had to admit, perhaps I'd misjudged her. I became the puppet of the Zhao clan. From then on, my entire life knew no respite. Even my 2 virtuous consorts were murdered because they were with child. When my father the king passed away, I ascended the throne smoothly with the Zhao clan's assistance. From the day I ascended the throne, the power of noble families surged overnight. There was even a saying among the common folk, better to be a noble's concubine than an emperor's consort. I feigned discord with my brothers, banishing them from the Qin capital and infecting them as feudal lords. Pitting feudal lords against the clans was a risky move, but fortunately, there were both losses and gains. I saw the woman from Kitahora again. Her beauty surpassed that of Lady Xin. Her emerald eyes were like a pool of spring water, captivating anyone with just a glance. I dared not look at her for long, fearing she would meet the same tragic end as those 2 concubines. Yet, 3 months passed, and she remained perfectly safe, so I sent someone to investigate and only then learned that Miss Zhao Lingyi, the eldest daughter of the Zhao family, seemed to have met this little princess of the northern plains on the day she entered the city and had taken quite a liking to her. Although Zhao Qingqiu was valued by the Zhao family, she ultimately couldn't compare to the true eldest daughter of the clan. I dislike the northern plains, a kingdom that relies on marriage alliances to secure its position, and so, I bestowed upon her my surname, Ji Mingyu. She seemed rather dull, unable to write Qin's script or speak much of its tongue, so I began teaching her, little by little. At last, I understood why Lady Xin alone held Father King's favor. I wanted her to learn Qin's dances, sing Qin's melodies, and become Qin's own. She was the one and only crescent moon in this world. I find it difficult to describe this feeling. When I was with Zhao Qingqiu, I always wanted to protect her, to yield to her, because she was as pitiable as I was. But when I was with Ji Mingyu, I wouldn't think of anything. She would embrace me, and she would need me. I couldn't tell which one was love. Later, Zhao Lingyi also entered the palace. To maintain certain delicate balances among the noble families, I began to distribute my favors equally. I recalled my promise to the Zhao family that the queen would surely be a Zhao woman, so I went to discuss it with Chancellor Zhao, but Chancellor Zhao was no longer as resolute as before. He said that Lingyi could do as she pleased. A minor disagreement arose within the Zhao clan. Most believed Zhao Lingyi was exceptionally intelligent and, as the eldest daughter of the family head, was the ideal choice to become queen. Unfortunately, Zhao Lingyi herself was not very willing. Although Zhao Qingqiu was favored by the clan elders, she was still only a concubine-born daughter. If in the imperial harem, she were to become the empress while Zhao Lingyi, the legitimate eldest daughter, had to settle for a consort's position, it would be quite displeasing. Thus, Chancellor Zhao only asked whether Zhao Lingyi was willing, without mentioning Zhao Qingqiu at all. After Zhao Qingqiu entered the palace, I kept my youthful promise to her by giving her the very best of everything. Even her cousin Zhao Lingyi couldn't compare to her. I harbor a peculiar sense of guilt toward Zhao Qingqiu. I feel guilty because I promised to love her, yet my heart stirred for another. I compensate by treating her twice as well. Yet every time I see her smile at me, sadness suddenly overwhelms me. Qingqiu is deceiving me. She doesn't love me. She puts on the same pitiful act in front of everyone. Before my elder brothers left, they warned me that Qingqiu was no good woman. She curries favor with everyone, tirelessly flaunting her manufactured sorrows. Though others saw through her lies effortlessly, only I remained ensnared by her pitiful charms. Yuioro is pregnant. When I went to visit her, I noticed traces of melancholy between her brows that hadn't been there before. I fear she'll become like this. My mother was the same, gradually losing her smile, then drowning herself in drink every day. As if guided by some unseen force, I decided to make her my queen. By then, I had learned that Zhao Qingqiu's true backer was her uncle Zhao Yang, while Zhao Lingyi relied on Chancellor Zhao. Recently, tensions had been brewing between Zhao Yang and the Chancellor. I thought that by making Yuioro queen, neither side would dare to speak against it. Indeed, once the imperial edict appointing the empress was issued, Chancellor Zhao was satisfied. Though others opposed it, they didn't take any significant action. Moonchild, perhaps you still don't realize a powerless position as empress is the last gift I can give you. Even though in your heart, I may seem like an omnipotent sovereign, I've been constantly severing ties between noble families. Under the pretext of celebrating Zhao Qingqiu's birthday, I lavished rewards upon the royal clan. I know my brothers have begun stockpiling troops. A final battle between imperial authority and the noble clans is inevitable. I doted on Zhao Qingqiu, thus neglecting other noble ladies. I knew I had wronged Qingqiu, so I pampered her and showered her with favor, until she grew increasingly ruthless, just as she had dealt with my two virtuous consorts in the past, and killed my child. How heartbroken Yueyar must have been. I didn't know what to do. Zhao Yang would soon return triumphant from the campaign, and I couldn't even show her any care at this moment, night after night. I gazed at her windowsill from afar, yet dared not meet her. I knew she was grieving, yet I pretended not to see. The crescent moon embroidered a pouch for me. My heart rejoiced at it, yet I also knew we could never go back. Lady Zhao's resentment toward me grew with each passing day. Just then, my trusted aide reported that my exiled brother had returned, right under my nose, within the ranks of my royal army. I helped him as much as I could, knowing full well that in his heart I was no different from my other brothers. Ji Changhuan matured swiftly. One day, when I am no more, he will make a fine emperor. In the 6th year of Yueyar entering the palace, our child was born. The child was truly beautiful, resembling Yueyar in every way except for the eyes, which were like mine, not jade green. I named this child Yang He. I hoped that if, in the future, Ji Changhuan became the ruler, my child could still retreat to the countryside, living in peace and happiness. And after all these years of battling those noble families, whether I can enjoy my twilight years remains uncertain. If only that child was still here, born in my likeness, with crescent moon eyes of jade green. In this lifetime, I was only the king of Qin for 20 years. For the decades that followed, I've been searching for myself. What was missing between Ji Changjing and Mu Ermage that led them to this current state? Lady Xin once told me that I was a good child, only somewhat too kind-hearted. Before his passing, my father warned me that he had always known women from the northern plains were skilled in using poison, and he earnestly hoped I would be cautious. I wore that pouch for a long time afterward, though I replaced all the spices inside. The 2 rabbits embroidered on it must be the only pair of green-eyed rabbits under heaven. After I faked my death and left the palace, I never had the chance to see my old acquaintances again. My second son, Huaijin. Later, I saw him in Lingnan, watering his horses at Peach Blossom Creek with a few servants. Fearing spies, he dared not call me father. Many more years passed when the obituary announced the death of my wife, Mu Ermage, that little princess from the northern plains. She never cared for apricot blossoms, yet ironically, the year I was born saw the most splendid apricot blooms across the Qin kingdom.